Welcome to Environmental Law Explored, a podcast series, the podcast of the American Bar Association section of Environment, Energy, and Resources. SEER is a member organization whose mission is to foster the success of a diverse community of environmental, energy, and resources lawyers, advisors, law students, and decision makers, and provide a premier forum for the exchange of ideas and information.
Hello, my name is Evynn Overton. I am a partner at Beveridge & Diamond. My practice is a mix of environmental litigation, environmental crimes defense, and regulatory counseling. And I serve as a co-chair of the ABA SEER InHouse Counsel Committee. And I'm pleased to say this is our committee's inaugural podcast. We decided to do a series essentially human interest stories about life as an attorney and life in particular as an in-house attorney. I am delighted to be joined by Jessica Sharrow Thompson. Jessica is senior counsel, EHS and sustainability attorney at PPG. And Jessica and I serve on the ABA SEER in-house counsel committee together. Jessica, welcome. Thank you for joining me for this.
Thank you very much for having me today, Evynn.
Great. Well, our subject today is comparing in-house role to private practice, biggest surprises when making the switch. So it's no secret that Jess is a great interviewee here because Jess has served both as a firm attorney and is now in-house at PPG. So to lay the groundwork for the discussion, Jess, if you could walk us through your professional background leading up to your move in-house.
Sure, happy to do so. So I graduated law school in 2006, which seems like such a long time ago now. And I actually graduated with a focus of wanting to do environmental law. So I was lucky enough to start my first firm in the fall of 2006, practicing environmental law, and I stayed there for a few years. And then I moved to my second firm that I was with for a little over 10 years before I jumped in-house. And at both places, I practiced environmental law. And while I was at my second firm, Eckert Siemens, I became partner there, did the whole thing of getting clients, trying to bill hours. So I really did have like sort of what I would consider a rich sort of professional career at a law firm, but I was definitely ready to make a switch in-house. I think I knew early on that this is where I wanted to go. So I was really excited when the opportunity at PPG came up because I knew it would be perfect for me.
Well, that's very interesting. So you did practice at your firm for quite a while and achieved partnership. So I guess what year was it that you joined PPG?
Yes, thanks, Evynn. Yeah, it was June 2019. So I had started with my last firm in April 2009 and left in June 2019. So like I said, just a little over that 10 years, which was a very long time to stay at that firm. And I did really enjoy it, but we at that firm had a very small environmental practice. 3 attorneys, 4 attorneys, 5 at most at one point. So very small. So by the time I was looking to go in-house, I had the role of playing junior associate, mid-level associate, senior associate, and my partner role, trying to bring in clients and generate business as well. So I was definitely ready to sort of make the switch where I didn't have to do perhaps all the work myself, which was something that was very exciting about the in-house role.
Oh, that's great. So you mentioned before that you kind of always knew you wanted to go in-house. How did you know that, and why did you feel that way?
Yeah, so I've always liked, I think the best part about my practice is working directly with clients, being on calls with them, participating sort of in strategy meetings, advising them. And that really sort of came into focus, I would say, the few years before I left at PPG. I was working for a smaller client that didn't have any in-house legal counsel. So I really got to play the role of, outside in-house environmental counsel to them, working directly with the C-suite, on matters and, directly advising them and coming up with legal strategy and being on calls with them. And I really enjoyed that perhaps the most, more so, for example, than, drafting briefs, which of course I still did, but I really like that sort of human to human interaction and advising, clients and people. I would say, more on the fly versus, writing legal memos and legal briefs.
So you really noticed that was the part of the work that you enjoyed the most. So
yes,
we're looking for a role where you could do more of that.
Yeah.
That's great. So how was the process in terms of just, making that transition? How did the process go for you?
It could have been easier. I was very lucky. I had worked with PPG before I moved in-house here, so I knew the manager that hired me here. And fortunately, and not surprisingly, he knows, I think, everybody within PPG to know, and he's very well respected. So, and he's very good. So he's been very good about introducing me to all the right people, telling people, hey, Jess is the person to trust now to do the work. So it could have been easier in terms of, I think, making the switch. In terms of defined roles, we're not very structured within the legal department. So I really just did a lot of the same things I did while I was in private practice in terms of, working with people, trying to get them to talk to me every day, saying, look, you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out and contact me, and really networking to build those relationships within PPG, with the EHS function. So they felt comfortable coming to me with any questions, and it sort of naturally flows from there in terms of advising and, providing counsel to people within the organization.
That's interesting because in-house, to call it networking, but I guess it really is networking. It's building those relationships and encouraging people to come to you.
Yes, in fact, the one thing I was thinking of is actually have more clients, I would say, in-house than I ever did as outside counsel, in a sense, because I work with so many different people here who all do something a little bit different. And it's great, though, in that respect. So, it is really interesting. Instead of just working, for example, with a outside general counsel or or when I was in private practice, like an inside general counsel or an inside environmental counsel, I work with, multiple people within the EHS function here who wouldn't necessarily ever I would have direct contact with when I was at a law firm. So I really enjoy sort of getting to know the people, not only within our function, sort of our corporate group, but also people at the plants too. I have a lot more interaction with plant managers, with EHS people at the plant, which is great too, because they're often the sort of frontline first people to spot issues before they become problematic.
Oh, that's great. So that has to count as among one of the biggest surprises when you switch, that you actually increased your client roster by moving in-house.
Yes.
So you've touched on this already, but can you kind of describe what your current role entails at PPG as senior counsel, EHS? We should spell that out: environmental health and safety and sustainability within PPG.
I was thinking about this, I provide, just on a fundamental level, I would say day-to-day support to PPG's EHS function, environmental health and safety function. We have a new sustainability function that I provide support to as well. And our environmental health and safety function also includes product stewardship and remediation. So really anything you can think that would sort of touch on the EHS field, that's what our sort of corporate function provides. And then in addition to that, we have people both working sort of at the corporate level and the plant level that need that day-to-day support. So that's one. The second thing, of course, which is probably not surprising, but I manage and work with outside counsel that we have working on our matters. And for environmental and EHS, it really runs the gamut from sort of environmental litigation to enforcement matters, to remediation matters, and other various matters that we bring outside counsel in. And one of, I guess, more surprising things, which I really enjoy, is, I guess, because we're a small legal team within PPG, which is great. I really get to be sort of provide like legal and strategic support to our EHS leadership team within PPG. And to some extent, of course, the business leaders as well. So that's been really great. So it's not just the day-to-day work, but get to participate in leadership and strategy sessions. And right now, most of my work is at least focused on the US and Canada region, which is great. But of course, PPG is a global company. So as I expand into my role, I'll be taking on more and more global matters because we manage the sort of EHS global matters here from Pittsburgh as well.
That's amazing. I mean, your job has such a wide range of components, and then to think about doing that on a global level is really it's a big scope.
It is, yes.
But very, very exciting. So I guess just to get into really drill down a little bit on the topic for today, some of the biggest differences when you made the switch, we've already sort of talked about some of them, but can you walk us through some key differences you noticed when you transitioned to your in-house role?
Well, I think the first one, probably not surprising, but it was still wonderful, is I no longer had billable hours or keeping track of time, no more keeping track of my life on 6-minute intervals. And, again, since I was a partner when I left for in-house, I no longer had the sort of the pressure of generating business and bringing in money, which was nice too. So that has been a huge difference because most, the focus now, I at least think, I mean, of course, there's always administrative matters and budgeting, but it's a lot less focus on sort of billing and bringing in money. I love it because it's more focusing on providing legal support. So I think that's just a wonderful change from being at the law firm.
That's great. How long did it take you to just get used to the fact that you didn't have to enter your time?
I think it took literally a day.
You were over it.
I was over it.
That's great.
Yeah, no, it was a good thing for sure, which I'm sure most firm attorneys would say going into the house. Now, I'm lucky. I know some legal departments still ask people to keep track of time, maybe not on the level of detail as they had to while they were at a law firm, but at least here at PPG, they don't ask us to do that, which is great.
That's great. So as far as thinking about differences, was there anything in particular that surprised you when you made the switch? Maybe something that you didn't anticipate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. I mean, the first thing is when you go in-house, you're no longer the money maker anymore, right? I mean, when you're at a law firm, you're bringing in the money. So all the support staff, I mean, the whole firm is there to essentially support you, essentially making money. So, things like IT matters get resolved right away, and you have all the tools and resources that you could want. Going in-house, again, you're no longer the money maker. Mm-hmm. You are now sort of spending money for the organization. And at PPG, it's not a bad thing, but it did mean, for example, tools I had grown incredibly used to and heavily relied on while I was at a law firm, for example, like Lexis, Westlaw, and even Adobe Pro. All of a sudden, those things were not automatically given to me in-house. And I did have to, for example, justify that I needed access to Westlaw and I needed Adobe Pro. So I wasn't expecting that. Now, granted, it was easy to justify, but at the same time, too, those tools I'd grown so accustomed to in law firm weren't, no longer handed to me on a silver platter.
It wasn't automatic.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's one thing. I think, the couple other sort of the differences, perhaps not surprising, but still good differences, is just, I guess, the scope and the breadth of matters that I work on. I was a true environmental attorney, probably like most people in SEER, really focusing on air, water, and waste, and know those areas I feel like the back of my hand. But coming in-house, you have to be much more of a generalist. Even if you're what I'm doing, which really is focusing on the EHS function here, environmental health and safety. So I work on a lot of OSHA matters now, which I really didn't do much before coming in-house. I work on these sort of obscure statutes like the Chemical Weapons Convention Act and drug precursors under the DEA, things I didn't even know existed. So, which I'm sure people work on, but it's been so nice because you're getting to learn whole different areas of law and advising on them. And I at least really like learning new things. And then PPG, with being a sort of consumer products organization, we have a whole what's called a product stewardship function. So all the chemical regulations, consumer products, all of that is a whole new area that I'm still learning and will probably be learning for years to get fully comfortable with it. But I really do like that challenge.
So it sounds like even if you're a firm practitioner with a very broad practice, what you're now experiencing is much more broad even than that. Is that fair?
Absolutely, much more broad. And I think, the one thing being in-house is you do get to see matters and questions come up that, as long as a company has an in-house legal department, it probably would never make it to outside counsel. So that's really, yes. So there's so many different types of questions and matters come up that I couldn't even imagine seeing ever getting to outside counsel, because we're expected to, while we can certainly use outside counsel, we're sort of expected to sort of figure these things out sort of quickly and respond quickly to our internal clients on them.
Right. That's interesting. So as an outside lawyer, you may not even be aware of how varied and diverse the topics are that in-house counsel have to tackle.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's one thing I love about being in-house counsel. I mean, you're really the front line and gatekeeper for all the sort of, legal matters or legal questions that may arise, which I really like it. And it's interesting for the EHS sort of legal team, which there are just two of us here at PPG. I guess even another surprising thing, we get all the random questions, I will say. Really random, where people don't quite know, is this it's not a commercial question, it's not a labor employment question, it's not an IP question, it's not a litigation.
EHS.
So it goes to EHS. Got a random question the other day, there's some teleworks statute out there for telephones. Can't even remember it, but there really is the miscellaneous, I would say, legal team, where any random question that doesn't neatly fit into another bucket within our legal organization comes to us.
Oh, that's funny. I wonder if that's the case at lots of companies, whether EHS finds itself kind of gathering those.
Yeah, it's very possible. I think if it has to touch on safety at all, or arguably safety,
right,
or the EHS at all, it somehow makes its way to us.
Oh, that's really funny. Well, it sounds like you have to be very nimble and very willing to throw yourself into different topics. Is that something you knew about yourself before you joined PPG?
I think it is something I knew about myself. And I think one reason why I thought I would really like in-house, it is not for the person being in-house who likes to dig into a single project, who knows what their day should look like, or wants to know what their day should look like. It is exactly what you said, Evynn. You have to be very nimble, switching back and forth between many different matters, many different questions, sounding confident, which again, people in law firms do as well, but really sounding confident when you have no idea what the question is being asked. And really too, I think even more than being in a law firm, is being able to sort of make decisions, provide advice, within the sort of the risk tolerance of the organization, with even imperfect information. So, there's lots of times where it's a lot of judgment calls. And I really like that aspect of it, because I think that's kind of fun. But for someone who's very sort of risk adverse and wants to have perfect information and perfect research for providing, legal advice, that doesn't work as well in-house as I think it could in a law firm.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation. And it sounds like you're well suited to the fast-paced and varied topics that pop up. But yeah, that would be hard for someone who really likes to master one topic, for example, and know everything about it, but wouldn't feel as comfortable with such a mix of issues.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Before we talk about, I'm curious to know if there's anything you miss about private practice, anything at all. But before we shift to that, you mentioned how in private practice you had actually been there long enough that you'd experienced lots of different phases, as an associate, as a partner, as somebody working to develop business. As an in-house lawyer working with outside counsel, do you draw on your own experience in a firm to inform kind of how you manage those relationships?
Yeah, I do. And I think I've been doing that more and more. For example, I sort of get the pressures that people have when you're in a firm. So I feel one, I'm more understanding in a lot of ways, and I don't set artificial deadlines and completely understand, of course, when things pop up with the attorneys, I would say very forgiving. Someone sends me an email with a typo, I'm not like ignoring it. I get things like that. But in terms of, like sort of like the business and stuff, I do think I am almost, and this will probably change over time. I still have a little bit of a luxury of time where I get to dig in a little bit more to outside counsel matters. So if, for example, I'm not happy with the strategic direction, I am not afraid to, make that known, of course, in a very polite way, but say, I want to discuss this more, and even do a little bit of research on my own if something, at least in my experience, isn't jiving with where I think it should come out, and really do like to talk it through with outside counsel. Unfortunately, the outside counsel I work with are very, I guess, patient and accommodating to me on that, and wanting to sort of dig in and talk through the issue sometimes to make sure we're ending up in the best place. So I think it works well both ways. I think I like to think I'm very understanding, and very accommodating, but at the same time too, I still, I do want to dig into certain of those issues and talk through them and make sure we're going in the right strategic direction. And it's funny, when reviewing bills, I would say it goes both ways. Like, I'm very lenient. I mean, I'm not going to mark up a bill, but if I see something that really doesn't make sense, I will call it out.
Yeah.
So I think it's good, because I worked at a firm long enough that I get it. I feel like I get it. I know how it works in a firm. So I feel like I'm going to be very accommodating.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure your outside counsel appreciate that. So I guess, is there anything you do miss about private practice? We've already established it's not tracking your hours, but is there anything that you miss, and maybe that surprised you that you miss?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things. One, I mean, while I do try and want to dig in where I can, I don't have that luxury anymore in terms of really complex matters. I mean, there is an element of trust I have to have with outside counsel, and where I was used to in a law firm, doing all the research, knowing ins and outs of every, for a certain legal issue, digging into federal preambles, for example, knowing everything there was to know. I just don't have that luxury now. So I do miss that. I kind of did like going down the rabbit hole sometimes when I was in a law firm trying to find that perfect argument. Just can't do that now. I have too many different matters, too many different clients within the organization. And then I do miss sort of, again, I manage environmental litigation matters, but I can't do all the work that goes into it. So while I don't miss writing briefs, I do sort of miss the litigation aspects. I won't ever take a deposition again, and I won't ever go into court and argue a motion, and that's okay, because I really like the in-house stuff, but I do miss that stuff a little bit, sort of being on the more of the litigator side.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. You're kind of directing and managing more
Yes.
than actually doing in the first instance on those pieces.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's very that's an interesting comparison. And then on the other hand, you have so much very direct client contact that sounds very gratifying.
It is, again, lucky to be within an organization like PPG. Our legal team is very lean and well respected. So, you know, in terms of, again, they're still our clients, but we're really, truly trusted advisors. And that's just great to see. I mean, we provide advice, direction. I mean, people don't ignore it, which is good. Always good when you're in-house. You know, they really, our internal clients really do take it to heart and do consider the lawyers, not just our EHS lawyers, but the other lawyers as well, really part of the teams and leaders within the organization, which is great.
Well, that's great. It sounds like you've entered a really positive culture. That's wonderful. So I guess if you were speaking to a firm lawyer contemplating this kind of switch, what would you tell that firm lawyer? What did you wish someone said to you as you were thinking about it, or maybe someone did say it to you when you were sort of starting this transition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think I got really lucky in terms of just PPG being a great organization to work for. So I think, you know, when you're contemplating going in-house, it's really understanding the organization. I mean, is this an organization? Is it run the way you would, you know, as a way you would want to work for? And, you know, how valued is the legal team within the organization? Are they considered a black box? Or I think I got really lucky and I didn't even realize this, you know, how valued and integrated the legal team is within the organization and trusted leaders, because it makes the job a lot easier when you're sort of fully integrated and considered leaders within the organization and they come to you. So I think that's one thing, really trying to sort of understand the legal, you know, the organization that you are contemplating going in-house to, and how the legal organization fits, you know, the legal department fits within that organization. And then two, I think it's really trying to, you know, being prepared for, it's going to be, you know, really fast paced. There's going to be a ton of new learning, a ton of new just sort of business terms where I don't have an MBA, but all of a sudden, you know, you're going to be thrown into a world where everybody speaks in business terms and uses PowerPoint and Excel spreadsheets all day long, and you're going to be expected to do the same. So it's no longer sort of talking lawyer speak. Really got to have to learn how to talk the sort of business speak. So that's one thing I wish I was more prepared for. I'm actually going to be taking a mini sort of MBA course for in-house counsel, because I really want to be better in terms of talking like a corporate person versus talking like a lawyer. So that's so I think that will be good. And then really it's the one thing you want to understand, you probably won't know until you get in-house, is really understanding, you know, what the risk tolerance is, you know, for the organization to be able to advise them. And you're going to be making, you know, providing counsel and making decisions, again, like I said, with imperfect information and imperfect research. You have to be able to make decisions, have to be able to follow through on them. But at least the one advice I got going into PPG, which was great and made me feel better, is you can't screw up that bad. There's nothing we can't fix. So that attitude, I think, is really good to have with, like, you know, the legal department and the organization itself, is understanding, yeah, mistakes may happen, but we can always fix it. So if you go to an organization or a legal department where they want you to be perfect all the time, you know, again, with having imperfect information and imperfect research, that's not going to be a good environment to work in.
Right, especially with the volume and variation that you're tackling. I think, yeah, that wouldn't be a reasonable expectation.
Yeah.
So that would be really hard. I'm so fascinated by your point about learning business speak and taking a course to sort of have a little bit of the, I guess, business training for an in-house lawyer. And I wouldn't have thought of that, although as you say it makes a lot of sense. Is that something you think firm lawyers, whether they're thinking about making the switch or not, I mean, would that be a valuable, I guess, learning for even firm lawyers supporting companies?
Yeah, I really do think so. Especially now having been in-house, especially when you're talking to anybody who's not a lawyer within an organization, who's a business leader, this is how they've been trained and how they understand things. So I think, yeah, I really do think it would be beneficial. And again, part of the EHS function and what we're supporting on is setting reserves, for example. So there's this financial aspect, which did not, really didn't advise at all when I was within the law firm. But now all of a sudden I got to understand these financial terms and be able to, help advise on reserves. So there's that type of aspect. And then, within an organization, there's a lot of project management and all the lingo around project management and goal setting, which, that's how the business runs. And if we're going to be good partners and if they're good about bringing us in, I think it really helps to understand, the terms that they use and why they're doing things a certain way. So that's really why I think, again, it would be, especially if you're working with business folks in a law, when you're at a law firm, really, I think, yeah, any sort of little mini MBA training, I think will be really helpful. Of course, we'll see. I haven't taken the course yet. I'm set to start soon, but I am very much looking forward to it.
No, that's great. Well, that's really good advice, because I'm sure that happens to a lot of firm lawyers who go in-house to suddenly have to speak the business language and function in that structure that very directly. That's got to be one of the biggest changes. So yeah, it's great you're taking that course.
Yeah, and Excel and PowerPoint training, because that's all they use.
Yeah.
That's all the business people use. I have been self-teaching myself more, especially with PowerPoint. People when you're in-house, you have to make really simple PowerPoints that are very colorful and visually pleasing. So it's kind of funny. I was just joking the other day. I was like, I had no idea I was going to have to use this much Excel and PowerPoint when I came in-house.
Well, Excel in particular, I feel like lawyers have an aversion to, and I count myself among them. But I like a nice Excel spreadsheet. I just am not great at it. So I'm sort of, intimidated by it. But that's great if you can master that.
Yeah, because that's all business people use. And I mean, we joke, because again, I think all lawyers have an aversion to Excel Excel spreadsheets, but that's the only thing that business people use.
That's so funny.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess before you make the switch, learn Excel and learn how to make nice, crisp, colorful PowerPoint.
Yes. Or at least be prepared to learn quickly once you're in-house.
Yes. Well, and what I'm hearing from you in general is that you have to be open to learning and be prepared to learn quickly on lots of different fronts.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that is the one thing about in-house. And I was prepared for it a little bit, but probably not to the extent, is really every day is learning something new. And I actually really like that, because I've always loved learning and learning something new so I don't get bored. But if you're the type of person who perhaps, has become very comfortable in your ways and obviously practiced for many years to get where you're at, it may not be the right thing going in-house, because again, there's so much learning, there's so much pivoting between different matters all day long. Lots of phone calls, which again, I like because I enjoy interacting with people, but there's lots of phone calls, and so you don't have that luxury of sort of, focusing on a single project or working with like one single client perhaps in a day, because there's always going to be different questions that come in, many different calls. and you have to really be able to switch back and forth quickly.
Great. Well, that sounds very exciting, and as you said, keeps you interested all the time, yes. I'm sure.
Yes, it really does.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap for our ABA SEER In-House Counsel Committee's very first podcast. It's comparing in-house role to private practice, biggest surprises when making the switch. And I'll just give a little plug that we are planning to do more of these podcasts. So if you enjoyed this one, please look for future podcasts. And Jess, special thank you to you for taking the time and sharing all these really interesting insights about your transition to your in-house role and what it's like.
Thank you very much, Evynn.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To learn more about our section, please visit our website at www.americanbar.org/enviro. Please check where you found us for future episodes. Thank you for listening.